For many years, humanity has asked a simple yet extremely important question. Are we truly alone in the universe? Through the course of this debate, I will attempt to persuade you that we will likely never encounter intelligent alien life outside of our planet Earth. As a preview of the main points of my discussion, I'm first going to define important terms related to this discussion. I'm then going to set some practical limitations on the scope of the discussion. And finally, I'm going to present evidence for my proposition in the form of facts and arguments backed by professional sources. So now that you know what my proposition is, let's jump right into it. First of all, defining important terms. And I really only think that there's one term that I need to define for this argument, and that is what I mean by intelligent life. Obviously, there's different ways to measure intelligence, what truly makes a creature actually intelligent. But for the sake of this debate, I'm going to define intelligent life as any sentient creature capable of abstract thought, self-awareness, and some rudimentary form of communication. So that's going to automatically rule out things like microbial life, some more primitive creatures that aren't capable of self-awareness or abstract thought. So now that I've defined my important terms, or term I guess in this case, I'm going to move on to setting some practical limitations on the scope of this discussion. And I feel like by doing so, I'm going to possibly answer an objection or two that people might have if they're not really sure what I'm arguing. People might be thinking, how could there not be other life in the universe outside of us? In the vastness of time and space, what are the odds? And honestly, I hear you. I actually think it's very likely, and it might be actually likely that there is intelligent life in the universe. But all I'm really arguing for is that we're never going to encounter other intelligent life or meaningfully communicate with it. I'm also not going to be discussing the pros and cons or the potential implications of communicating with these hypothetical beings. I'm simply talking about the evidence for or against this potential communication. So now that I've set some practical limitations on this debate, I'm going to jump into the evidence for my proposition. But before I do that, I probably need to talk about something called the Fermi paradox. Now, what is this? Well, when I first learned about the Fermi paradox, read about it, I was actually surprised I had never thought of it before. It's this interesting scientific concept that points out an apparent contradiction between the lack of evidence for intelligent alien life and the various high mathematical estimates that it does indeed exist. And there are various answers to this apparent paradox, many of which pointing to the possibility that we simply can't communicate with intelligent life outside of our own planet. But first, I'm probably going to need to provide a little evidence for the Fermi paradox. In a February 2021 article titled NASA Astrobiology, Mark Kaufman stated that we have yet to discover life outside of Earth. So that's an organization like NASA saying that we don't actually have any concrete proof yet that there is life outside of Earth. But what about the second part of the Fermi paradox, the various high mathematical estimates? Well, in a May 2016 article titled, Are We Alone in the Universe? Revisiting the Drake Equation, Lenore Sierra stated that unless the odds of intelligent life sprouting up on a habitable planet other than our own is extremely low, astonishingly low, we can't possibly be the first intelligent life in the universe. So there's the Fermi paradox. What are some of the potential answers? Well, I'm going to be presenting three that show it might not be possible to communicate with intelligent alien life outside of this planet. First of all, there was a 2011 article titled Alone in the Universe, and in it Howard A. Smith stated that there are most of the stars that are in our Milky Way galaxy are extremely far away. If we were to send any kind of signal to planets near these stars, it would take an immense amount of time for any kind of signal to get there and an immense amount of time for it to get back. This argument is mainly about the practical limitations of how fast anything can go. Even if we're being generous with how fast future spacecrafts could move or probes could travel or signals, there's only so fast that anything can go when something is light years away. So it may not be possible to reach this life. A second argument, stated also in this same article by Smith, says that there might be more specific conditions to creating intelligent life than we at first suspect. Not impossible, but maybe more specific. And a good way to illustrate this is to consider our planet. Our planet has an abundance of water on it in our oceans, but there's also a fair amount of land mass, and this enabled fish to eventually crawl upon land and evolve into tool makers, creating a technology-based society and eventually a spacefaring planet. Let's say another planet had just a bit more water than ours. The sea life there might not be capable of crawling upon land and taking that step into technology, tool making, and thus they would never be spacefaring. So intelligent life might be a bit more rare than we think. Another argument is simply having to do with the course that intelligent life actually takes. And what I mean by that is normally we like to consider what kind of improvements we can make as we get more technology and we become more intelligent. But the issue with this is that we don't have a lot of frame of reference. In terms of our civilizations, 6,000 to 10,000 years ago is about as far back as we can go, and if you want to narrow down intelligent civilizations to radio-based, that's only around 100 years. In a February 2021 article titled "The Fermi Paradox: Where Are All the Aliens?", Kate Lones discusses the idea that intelligent civilizations can really only exist for a certain amount of time before they destroy themselves. And it's a grim thought, but if we look around at ourselves and realize we've not been heavily technology-based for that long, and we're already starting to see problems, the looming threat of nuclear weapons, the potential threat of artificial intelligence, global warming, diminishing resources. It's very possible that when intelligent species run their course, they do end up self-destructing. So that might be something to keep an eye on. But now that I've presented some evidence for my proposition, I'm going to conclude with some closing remarks. So through the scope of this discussion, I attempted to persuade you that we will likely never encounter intelligent alien life outside of our planet Earth. I first defined my terms, I then set some practical limitations on the scope of the discussion, and finally I hopefully proved my proposition through presenting evidence in the form of facts and arguments backed by professional sources. I'll leave you with this. Because of the immense implications of interstellar isolation, it is imperative that we carefully examine the evidence for and against communicating with intelligent aliens. Thank you.